a message from Shaykh Mirza Yawar Baig from Islamic Society of Western Mass and from the Hampshire Mosque. So go ahead.
Greetings of peace, everybody. It's so amazing to see that many people here on a Sunday afternoon. And I am going to try and play his recording, and I hope you can hear him. All right, here it goes.
Hello, everybody. Since I have to run off at 4:45 for my for the prayers here, I thought let me record this because I don't know if I will have the opportunity to speak to you before that. What I want to say about this issue of reparative justice is, what if there was no need for reparative justice because justice was done at the time it should have been done? Reparations in any case do not bring back dead people. They do not bring back, or they do not pay for the torture that people suffered. They don't pay for all that was done to somebody. And in many cases, we are now looking at a couple of generations later. So at the end of it, if you say, well, I want to make reparations, I want to restore, in reality, we are not restoring anything. We are paying for or compensating. And we are compensating probably, and not just probably, but most of the time, people who were not directly affected. So somebody was directly affected, that story is over. We are now compensating somebody who has followed in their footsteps a few generations later. What if there was no need for that? And that the only way of doing that is to ensure that justice is done every single time, all the time, in real time, here and now. One of the greatest symbols of injustice, of the most terrible form of repression and the most terrible form of genocide is the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust. And I always say that despite whatever reparations may have been made, whatever compensation may have been paid to the descendants of those who died in that Holocaust, what if there had been no Holocaust? Because the people of the time, the Germans, the Americans, the Europeans, had come forward and stopped it from happening. And what if none of those people, those innocent Jewish men, women, children, and then along with them were the gypsies and others who perished in Hitler's concentration camps, what if that never happened because it had been stopped in time? I think that is something that I'd really like to think about and say, what is it I can do? What is it you can do? What is it all of us can do together to ensure that injustice never happens in the first place? The thing that comes to mind right now as we speak is what is happening in Gaza with the Palestinians. Again, I'm not going into the issue of politically speaking, who is right, who's wrong. I'm just saying that murder is wrong, death is wrong, little children being blown up in their homes is wrong, children having to live to see the homes of their friends and relatives be bombed and destroyed, and not having an answer. What can I do? There's this absolutely heart-rending video of this little 10-year-old girl who's saying, what can I do? How do you expect me to fix this? I'm only 10 years old. I mean, imagine for a little girl to have to say that. And whatever be as I said, I'm not getting into the politics of the thing. I'm just saying that whatever is the issue, that issue can only be resolved in one way, and that is across the table negotiating. It cannot be resolved with F-16s, that it cannot be resolved by Apache helicopters dropping bombs. It cannot be resolved by blowing up buildings. It cannot be resolved by murdering and killing people. And whether it is this party or that party doing that, it's the same murder. And murder is murder. And I'm saying that is happening right now before our eyes. So when we are talking about reparations and we are talking about making up for evil that happened when we were not there to stop it, I'm saying right now there is stuff happening which is in our part to stop, at least in our part to raise our voices, so let us do that. And that's what I want to say. As I said, I have to run off because I have an appointment at 4:45. I have to go lead prayers in my mosque. And so I have to run, but I just thought, let me send this out to you. I'm sending it to our sister Naz Muhammad, and I'm requesting her to send it to whoever of the organizers that she can send it to, and hopefully that gets to you in time. I wish you all the very best, and standing with you shoulder to shoulder in this struggle to eliminate racism, not just from this country, but from the world. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Naz, for sharing that from Yawar. And yesterday, Yawar sent me a very moving kind of reflection on the agony of Gaza and what's happening in Israel right now. And we will send out a follow-up email after this is done to all of you. And I'll make sure to put in also that reflection that he had on that, because I'd like for you all to see that. So we're going to have a few minutes still to share from Jeff Gold, who is one of the leaders of the racial justice work of the Tikkun Olam committee at the Jewish Committee of Amherst. And thank you, Jeff, for agreeing to also share your experience of how Judaism has helped to shape your understanding of reparative justice.
Thanks, Peter, and thank you all. And in particular, I want to thank Doctors Jacqueline Smith-Crooks and Dr. William Smith for their very personal presentations and reflections regarding faith and social justice. And in particular, I think that you've offered us some very personal and deep lessons on the dynamic between the particular and the universal. And I also want to thank, obviously he's not here, he's in prayer now, but I want to thank Yawar for his statements. I wish I had more time to engage in a conversation that he brought up about reparations and the Holocaust. I am going to mention that a little bit, but I kind of want to take a little step backwards. And before I make a few comments about reparative justice and the Jewish tradition, I thought I would quote a very short stanza from Amanda Gorman's inaugural poem. The hill we climb, if only we dare. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. And how we repair it. Within Judaism, there is the concept of Teshuva, commonly translated as atonement, both individual and communal. As recently elaborated in the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association's Resolution on Reparations, Indigenous Genocide, and Systemic Racism, Teshuva, quote, calls on us to take responsibility for the harm we do to others, to cease the harmful behavior, to resolve not to repeat it, and repair the damage done, unquote. This is not about individual guilt. It is about our communal responsibility. Those of us in present times who identify or have been identified as white in our society may not be directly responsible for the history of chattel slavery and its complicated and awful aftermath of terroristic lynchings, Black codes, legal segregation, and various forms of systemic discrimination. But we have benefited by it and the ways in which that system is currently perpetuated. It seems to me that reparative justice and reparations must begin with an acknowledgement of the profound harm that the American experiment has committed. The second aspect of the Jewish tradition I'd like to call attention to is the prophetic call to justice. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. Understanding the current call for reparative justice in our country requires us to understand our own history. Germany did pay reparations to Holocaust survivors. And while we should not idealize that process, they made an effort and continued to do so to address the horrific crimes they committed during the Second World War. Germans shifted from feeling like they were victims of the Second World War to recognizing that they were the perpetrators of horrific crimes. That German effort, translated as working off the past, is something we in America are barely starting. It's a complex process for both victim and perpetrator. I think this is what we as Americans, those of us who are white Americans, have to struggle with and learn. Yawar mentioned very briefly this idea that if we could reverse history, then justice would occur. And my question to everybody is, what should atonement really look like? What has occurred in our country in terms of the history of indigenous peoples and the African-American experience of slavery and its aftermath is, strictly speaking, utterly irreparable. The author Susan Neiman brings this issue to light in her book, Learning from the Germans. The only atonement that fully provides restitution is to reverse history and restore a world where this crime against humanity never occurred. And this is impossible. Most individuals who experience profound trauma have this same wish, and we have to acknowledge its legitimacy. I wish it never happened. Why did it have to happen? One cannot fix or repair atrocities that are crimes against humanity. This is why German reparations to Holocaust survivors were so intensely debated in the Jewish community. Is there any adequate compensation for those who survived the final solution? Is there any adequate compensation for those who were slaughtered? To even attempt this, some considered an insult to those who perished. So any consideration of reparative justice and reparations, it seems to me, has to begin with a profound acknowledgement of the intergenerational traumatic harm done, even though that harm is incalculable. I want to stop there and thank everybody for this time. And I pass the baton back to you, Peter.